Good morning, CLC. In this moment, at this time, I invite each and every one of you to allow the great wave that is Spirit itself to just wash over you, filling yourself with the love and radiant light from beyond the beyond. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take a nice, deep, cleansing breath in, breathing in love, breathing in light, breathing in life. And as you release the breath, allow all that no longer serves you to just go away. Let it ooze out of you, relaxing your body, relaxing your mind. And if you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in. And as you release this breath, allow your body and your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself up to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me. Sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This could be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in this room or on this planet anymore. I turn to that image in my mind's eye and I say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically in this room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude in saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
Yeah, so what I have to say today is pretty simple, maybe brief, may not be brief, I don't know. We come from the great mystery, and we go to the great mystery. And in between the mystery on one side of us and the mystery on the other is this space in which we feel we should have certainty. And that's this life that we're in right now. We're conscious, we're here, we know that we're here, and we want to be clever about it. We want to be informed. We want to be effective, you know. But what we forget sometimes is that the mystery informs this space as well. We haven't left the mystery behind, even though we're in a space that appears to be about certainty, appears to be about routine, about learning incrementally, getting things done. We're still informed by the mystery. There's one mind, there's one life, there's one heart, there's one power. But today let's think of it as one mind. There's one mind in which everything lives and moves and has its being, and what that means is that mind is accessible to us and it informs us. And we can go to that mind and we can receive wisdom. We can receive information. We can put the information together and we can do something useful with it. Sometimes the information is just so. Sometimes it is what it appears to be. It says what it says. And other times it's encrypted. Other times the information is a bit arcane, you know, and we have to figure it out. And sometimes the information changes while it's in our hands. We were talking about this in a group yesterday. You go to your go-to book, if that's the Bible for you, or the Bible of your faith system, or the Science of Mind textbook, or anything that you consider a reference. You return to it. This includes, actually, as I'm thinking about it now, even the dictionary. Especially, do you remember the American Heritage Dictionary when that first came out? And it had these great pictures in it. It's a great big book. And it was so much more intriguing than Webster's and the kind of drier dictionaries that we'd had. You have to be of a certain age. I realize you have them on your phone now, and it's, you know, but it misses something. But you'd go to the dictionary and look something up, and on the way to that, you'd find something else. And that would lead to something else, and pretty soon, maybe an hour had passed, and you're sitting there with a dictionary. And you're like, well, I never knew that. The encyclopedias back in the day. A lot of us grew up with a whole shelf full of encyclopedias, you know. You go to it, and, well, then you go back to it, and you see something different that you thought you'd already covered, but it's on the page, it reads differently. We find this in the material that sources us spiritually. You go to it, and it's like, I never knew he said that. I can't tell you how many times I've been through the Science Mind textbook. I've also read the Bible front to back a few times, but the Science Mind textbook has been my go-to book for going on really close to 50 years. And it hasn't changed. It hasn't, you know, it's still there. And I'll crack it open and I'll see something in there. It's a fairly large book, 600 and some pages, but not interminable. And I'll see something there I've never seen before. And it's like, how did that happen? It's because it's a subjective process. What we're looking for, Ernest Holmes tells us, we're looking at and with. What we're looking for, we're looking at and with. Answers, meaning, purpose, excitement, adventure. We're looking through that. We possess a mental equivalent of that. We possess a subjective thought atmosphere about that. And this is how we view the world. So you go to information and the information changes. And it beckons you forward. And sometimes it takes you down a Alice in Wonderland type rabbit hole. Sometimes it takes you into the spiral of consciousness that you had not at all anticipated. See, we've been trained to want answers. Ever since we were little kids in school, they put a sum on the board and they said, what's the answer to this? They used to call them sums. What's 2 plus 2 equals, you had to have the right answer. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's usually where it started. Johnny has 2 apples, gives Susie, Susie has 2, they put them together, what do they have? 4 apples. That's the only correct answer for that in base 10 mathematics. It's not 5 apples, it's not pi to the 17th chapter or something. No, it's 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4. So we get this idea that everything has an answer. And they give us more and more complicated sums, and we do them, and we come up with the answers. And when we're not sure of the answer, you look in the back of the book, but then you got the answer. So you think everything has an answer. How I ought to live my life has an answer. We learn soon in the School of Real Experience that there are not enough answers. There are instead responses, and there's a difference. A response keeps a conversation going. An answer closes the conversation. 2 plus 2 equals 4, end of story. 2 plus 2 is, how do you feel about it? 2 what? Plus 2 what equals what? Are we talking about ingredients in a stew? Are we talking about living, breathing beings? Are we talking about planets converging? Are we, what exactly here? And everyone has a response. If I ask you to think of 2 pairs in your mind, what will you say? And I ask you, and I gather all of this information in. And isn't that interesting? And something occurs to you because you just saw it on the drive here, 2 deer coming out of the woods, 2 hawks circling overhead. Everybody has a subjective response to that isn't the answer. And we'll say, then, you look at the 2 hawks, you say, well, what does that mean? As though the meaning had an answer. But the meaning itself is subjective. It simply has a response. And again, the question must be asked, what does it mean to you? What would you like it to mean? What do you take away from it? You see, we're interpreting life, and we fall into this belief that it has a certain meaning that it's presenting to us that is unchanging, unyielding, and certain, when really it's all about the subjective place that we put ourselves in interpreting it. We make up our own answers as we go along. We make up our own responses as we go along. We make up our own rules as we go along, as we justify the choices that we make in terms of life. So the main thing I want you to realize, and I know you do, but I want to emphasize it, is that everywhere you look, there's a source of potential inspiration to you for whatever it is you want to do, and as well as a lot of things you didn't know you wanted to do. There are a lot of things you want to do you haven't yet met up with. And everywhere you look, there's an opening to that. I was reading about this. Have you ever heard of motif number one? Motif number one is a fishing shack, a red-painted fishing shack on a wharf in Rockport, Massachusetts, that is the most painted and photographed location on Earth. If you asked me what was the most photographed and painted location on Earth, and I had to think about it, I would probably say something like the Grand Canyon. You know, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, some monument, some historical landmark. No, it's a red fishing shack. People go there and they set up and they jostle in the summer for places on the adjoining wharves to set up their easels and their paints and paint this very simple red fishing shack that's been there since the 1840s. Why? Because everybody has a different take on it. It means something to everyone else. And if you got all the pictures that have been created of this place together, and they all looked red, and they all looked shack-like, you know, and you had them all on one great wall, and you looked at, you would still see a different light in one. You'd still see a different perspective in the other. You'd still see something else. Your imagination would be fired up simply because of this thing that seems to have a meaning that's deeper than by far its purpose. Now, if they can do that with this place, if people who consider themselves artists and photographic artists or visual artists, you know, go to this place to have this experience. And there's a similar place in France, and there's a cafe that Van Gogh, I think it's in Arles, there's a cafe that Van Gogh used to go to and sit and drink out on the sidewalk, you know, typical French cafe kind of vibe. And one night he brought his easel and his canvas and he painted the place. Why? Because he saw something there that was more than the functional side of it. He felt something there. He wanted to capture this spirit. If you can do that with the cafe, if you can do that with the fishing shack, if you can do it with these places that we all agree that we've heard of, that are notable and inspirational, then every common bush is aflame with God. And those who see take off their shoes, right? Then everywhere you look is this message coming to you. And it's the divine nature, seeking connection, seeking to draw you back into this, draw you back into this space of understanding and knowing that you are part of it. You're part of the creative process. See, this is what it means to be a co-creator. And sometimes we kind of limit that. We kind of dumb it down a little, that we're co-creators with the infinite. We say, well, you know, I'm manifesting stuff, and so I'm using spiritual principles. I'm using them in a deliberate kind of way. But we're manifesting on so many different levels, we have no idea. We are co-creating a spirit. We're co-creating a sensation. We're co-creating a feeling in the world through our interpretive nature of things. We're creating unconditional love, just as we think about it, just as we consider it. I had never heard of unconditional love until I came into metaphysics. I'd never heard the expression. Now it turns up in a few songs and things, but at the time, I'm like, what is that? And it was the closest thing that anyone had to explaining how the divine holds its own creation is in unconditional blessing and acceptance. Well, if that's true, and I'm to participate in that, then every time I rule something out as being uninteresting, as not having information that's useful to me, every time I discard something, I'm practicing unconditional disdain. I'm practicing because I have not taken the time to look. And sometimes you got to look twice. Sometimes you got to look twice. You look at something first as useful. Can I eat it? Can I wear it? Can I spend it? You know? And then you look at it again and you see, if I had no functional involvement with this, how would I hold it in my life? To just let it be what it is. Nature teaches us this. There's an awful lot of stuff in nature that you really shouldn't eat and can't wear, and it has no, the cloud floating overhead may have no real functional value in your life at this moment except shield you a little bit from the sun, but you still regard it and you see the beauty in it and you see the wonder in it. And I think every time I go there, I think of that beautiful old song, the old hymn, the old Christian hymn that was a favorite, little sideline here, favorite of Dr. William Hornaday, who was the founder, minister of Founders Church of Religious Science back in the day, longtime friend of Ernest Holmes. And wherever, I knew this man in the later years of his life and the early years of my involvement in this teaching. And wherever he spoke around the country, they found a singer somewhere to do this song called How Great Thou Art. O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, O Lord my God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. And it goes on in that vein. When I see the stars, when I hear the rolling thunder, the practical, conditioned side of the self wants to look at the stars and figure out which constellation we're looking at and the astronomical science of it, which is fine. But there's more there, because the constellations got pulled together through the imagination of the ancients. When I hear the rolling thunder, my first thought may be, are the car windows up? What is this going to mean for the picnic tomorrow? Right? It's practical stuff. Is the leak in the ceiling in the garage fixed? Or I hear the rolling thunder and I think, what power made that? And yeah, I know the science of it and why this is happening and the cumulus clouds and the barometric pressure and all that sort of thing. But still, and you throw yourself back into the minds of the ancestors who didn't possess the scientific information, the evidence that we have accumulated here, and they have this spirit, they have this sense of wonder. And yes, they sought answers too, and yes, they interpreted it. Sometimes we laugh at them because what they came up with, it seems so kind of childlike and simple, but really what it was just this beautiful knowing of the gods and goddesses are busy tonight. They're active. They're doing something. This means something. I think we're smarter to believe that everything means something than to believe that nothing means anything. But we possess the power to shape the belief and interpret the belief in our own way. And we live in the consequences of our choices in so doing. For instance, tomorrow there's going to be this full solar eclipse. Where we are right now, they're saying 94% on this band. If you want to, the closest spot to get to 100 is around Kerrville out in the hill country. However, it's supposed to rain heavily here. Darn. And this isn't happening for another 20 years, so come back then. But the ancients went out And they had eclipses. In fact, I read somewhere, and I'd have to vet this, but I read somewhere a war ended over an eclipse. A battle ended. Peloponnesian War or something, right? They're fighting. They all look up and like, whoa. Well, see, what our ancestors did is they went out, and let's say there was this kind of thing, and all of a sudden in the middle of an ordinary day, and they knew what ordinary days were like. I mean, they had a routine. And all of a sudden, in the middle of a day like this, the sky started to grow dark. And you know what some of them did? Some of them said, this is not good. This means trouble. Something terrible this way, something wicked this way comes by the pricking of my thumbs. Something, right? And others went out and the sky grew dark and they said, you know, I think this is a sign of great things to come. Something wonderful is about to happen. And both were right. Both were right. Because in the long run, and there is a long run, in the long run we get what we expect. We interpret the information in a self-defeating or a self-advancing way. We interpret the information in a culturally defeating or culturally advancing way, and we get to step into the experience that we've called for. Which is why this teaching offers not only a view of subjectivity as being your right to possess and your right to manage for yourself, but it encourages an optimism, an idealism, that no matter how much it looks like things are falling apart, in the long run, they're really falling together. Now, I didn't make that up, that statement. I don't know, I forget where I read it, but I like that. You know, it looks like things are falling apart, but in the long run, they're falling together because all things get recycled in some way. Sometimes, oh gosh, I don't know why I quote these things I do, but the Joker in Batman. The first Batman movie, he says, well, to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs, you know? So we take the ingredients, and they're no longer that. They're no longer what they appeared to be, and they're combined in some new way. Joseph Campbell talks about this in the Easter story of sacrifice, as we discussed some last week, where he says it's about bread from the death of wheat. The wheat has to stop being the wheat as wheat in order to, you get the picture. So we combine ingredients in some new way. So we're working through the accumulation. In 12-step work, they call it the wreckage of the past. Some of us have a wreckage of the past, but if it's not wreckage, it's at least accumulation. Maybe it's a closet full of junk or just stuff. And we're working to reassemble that into a life filled with purpose and meaning and joy and love today. That's our task. That's the work that we do. And we do this principally through a process of reinterpretation, reevaluation. I want to suggest finally this. You start this, if you like this idea of reinterpretation subjectively, and it's easier than it sounds. It's easier than I'm making it sound, but that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, but you start with people. You start with people. You look at people and you say, okay, this isn't just Joe or Susie or Mary or the people that I know. It's not just their history. It's not just their role in my life. This is an angelic being. This is a creature of the Most High. This is a god or goddess. This is first cause. This being is first cause. And this first cause is chosen to cross paths with me, interact with me in my life. You start looking at people that way. I'll tell you a quick story. A colleague of mine, now retired in the ministry, was flying to an event. A bunch of us were flying in from different parts of the country to this event a long time ago. Some of you have heard this story. I haven't told it in years. And so this one of us, colleague of mine, coming in from I don't know where, had a terrible flight. There was turbulence on the flight. People were sick on the flight. There was crying babies on the flight. The smoke. This is back in the day when you could smoke on airplanes, you know. Yes, there was such a time. And people were gagging on the smoke. You can picture all of this, okay? They were delayed. I don't know. And there was this tension with the crew and the passengers and so on. And this colleague of mine stood up and looked down the plane aisle, you know, and pictured wings, angelic wings on every passenger, and sat back down. And within about, she said, 10 minutes or so, baby stopped crying, air cleared, turbulence ended, food got delivered, so on. People dropped off to sleep. People had a normal kind of time. And when she got to the event that we were all attending, she gave a talk. We were all there to do that, and she gave a talk in which she said what I just told you. And so, of course, on the way home, all of us on our various airplanes going back to where we were from did the same thing. Whether or not there was a problem, we started. And I mean, it was a while before I stopped doing that, before I stopped remembering to do that, to put angelic wings on people. And whenever this story reoccurs in my mind, I start doing it again. Not because I have to, not because there's trouble or these people are difficult or things are weird, but just because it's so much fun to do and to see what happens. And this is how we can facilitate healing in the world without ever getting into anybody else's business, without ever getting in anybody else's face about what religion they are, what they ought to read or study or this, you know, because nobody wants that. Especially on an airplane, by the way. You clear out a whole section if you do that kind of thing, you know. But to just see people as this angelic presence that they are conducts them into the presence of their own magnificence. Conducts them into the presence of the great mystery, expressing as they are the natural self that they are, the whole and holy self that they are. And you can't ask for anything better than that. So that's enough for today. We'll have a little more next week.
So we really want to appreciate everything you do to support our center, whether it's just being here in person or online, you know, whether it's getting involved in whatever we do, it's your monetary contributions. We just want to thank you for that. And also, one way that you can thank us and help us get the message out is every time you tune into us online, please give us a like and then encourage other people to watch it and ask them to give us a like. So is there anybody here for the first time? I don't think so. All right, so in your mind or physically in your hand, take your gift and say with me, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
We can talk about where we find inspiration. I find a lot of inspiration here. It's probably why I've been here almost 20 years. I turned up in January of 2005. And I did the math and went, oh, I've been here almost 20 years. And in that time, I took all of the classes, became a practitioner, took more classes, went to ministerial school, and still haven't left. So here I am. And I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So, you know. But there's another place. And you can say what you want about social media, and it can be a minefield. But you can curate your feeds in such a way that you see really amazing things, which is why I'm putting my glasses on. I didn't find it on Facebook. I had to find it somewhere else. But when Reverend Jesse was talking about seeing things in another way, I saw this morning. If people sat outside and looked at the stars each night, I bet they would live a lot differently. When you look into infinity, you realize that there are more important things than what people do all day. And that is my suggestion for this week. I'm piggybacking on his suggestions. So, as we step consciously into the sacred, we are always looking into infinity, and infinity is always looking back at us. What is it that we want to see? So join with me now and know that there is one life, one power, one presence, one love. And that each of us live that life. We love that love. We are that presence. Each of us get to be the answer to someone else's prayer. Each of us get to be infinity walking because we always are. As Doris Jones said, God's not finished with me, and I'm not finished with God. We have infinity together. Stretch out your heart. Let it encompass the entire world. Stretch out your mind. Let it encompass the entire universe. Stretch out your soul and recognize that it is the one soul, and that anything at all is possible in that soul. Through you, the world is made a more beautiful place. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. I am grateful for this teaching that reminds me who I am, and to see you for who you are, the divine spark. I am grateful for this community. I am grateful for this technology. I am grateful for our ministers. I am grateful for our practitioners. I am grateful for our musicians. I am grateful because it feels good to be grateful. It makes my life amazing. I am grateful for each and every one of you. And I relax into this knowing that it is done, and so it is.
Say it with me now. Something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my
I
body.
feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my
I
mind.
feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I
I
am.
choose it.
I choose
I
it.
trust it.
I trust it.
I use it.
I use
And
it.
I love it.
And I
So
love
it
it.
is.
And so it is.